Okay, Happy New Year, all the violation and insults listeners out there. And by the way, we're just looking to get some likes, so feel free to follow. Put down a like. It sure helps our ego. Steve was whining about it the other day. Shout out to our sponsors, Brian Curl Basketball. Curly, you're a legend, and we appreciate your support. Does great things in Queensland and throughout Australia. Our other sponsor, FIT Education, Chris Weir, the RTO to go to when you're looking for your certificates and diplomas. All right, we got first off, welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Bruce. Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, mate, it's New Year, buoyant year.
Yeah.
And we've got a very special guest. How many years did you play, Luke Gribble, in the NBL?
First year was 89, and I finished up end of 96. So what's that,
8 years?
8 years, yeah.
Good job. Yeah. And teammates for both of us.
Yes, we did.
Not in the NBL.
Steve was at the Bullets when I returned to Brisbane from Hobart, but had injured his knee, hadn't you? And you sort of...
Yeah, 92, Luke started at the Bullets, and I finished.
Steve was there in 1991. So we didn't actually play together. And it was interesting, all our mates who we're all close with now would talk about Steve and as if I knew him. And I'm like, I've heard his name a million times, but we'd not crossed paths because Steve was a little bit younger than me, coming through under 18s, under 20s. So it wasn't until I got back from Hobart.
You were lucky enough to run into me, weren't you?
Lucky enough to bump into Steve McLeod.
In the locker room going through his teammates' pockets for change? I just want to shower.
In those days, there used to be rum and cola cans I was stealing from their bags.
Well, there was a weird Bundaberg connection because our good mate Lyndon Briefies, I knew Lyndon long before I met Steve because we played in the Queensland under-18 team together. And my first memory of meeting Lyndon was he was eating the whole squad's breakfast the night before, and I'm looking at him going, who is this guy?
Or was he silently whistling and chewing at the same time?
No, he was munching away just with that frown, looking at us, and I'm like, who is this guy? And then...
he's got nipples like bricklayers' thumbs.
He certainly does.
And no hair on his chest.
But I just want to shower you with praise before you start blurting in, Stevie. One of the most respected players I've had as a teammate. Now, these go with, obviously, Scott Fisher, Wayne Carroll, Ray Borner, Cecil Exum, Davey Grant. Those guys, they were glue. And what you did on the day-to-day was so admirable. And I'll never forget this, because we're going to ask you a lot of questions. We played Perth here. And because of I could use you in many different positions, point guard, 2, 3, but we had you guard Andrew Vlahov. Do you remember that?
Yeah. And Fisher at times, and James Crawford at times.
So, did whatever was asked, did it well, a glue.
Thank you. Thank you,
Leroy was glue. He trained, but you guys both had this quality. When we would practice with intent, practiced hard every day. Weight room, I'd go in there and watch you hump it at the QAS back down when the QAS was by the river, before they moved out to even smaller confines. But been a thrill.
Yeah,
to have been your teammate.
I mean, even Grizzly and I played together, maybe in A grade a few years but I saw a lot of him as well. When I finished coaching, I was doing junior development at the Bullets, and I took what is the Capitals today
in the QBL.
And Luke had just finished his career in the NBL, and he was my import essentially because I didn't have an import.
You would have gotten paid well for that.
But let's just say,
went straight into his retirement.
Yeah. And he was the captain, and it was important that the captain and the coach had to share rooms, and the manager and the assistant coach shared rooms. So that enabled us to
bond.
Yeah, it was a really important bond for us, especially when we were competing outside of Brisbane. But that's another story. Are you handing over to me for anything?
I am. Hand it over to you.
We call this on this show, Luke,
a pivot.
A pivot. We pivot quite a bit.
We do pivot.
So, a couple of things I have here. Lukey, born in Swan Hill, Victoria. Mm-hmm. So he's got a bit of that AFL, can't get out of him. Big Brisbane Lions fan, correct?
Correct, mate.
Yes. So did you play junior basketball in Swan Hill?
None. So I was, my family was in a little wheat farming town called Lalbert, just out of Swan Hill. And I was a baby when we left there, because people like Wayne Larkins, and there was a Andrew Gribble, I think, that played in the AFL. People sort of assumed that I was one related to him, which I wasn't. And then Wayne Larkins, we played together against each other. And,
I didn't know that.
Sean Dennis was from that same sort of region. And so I never played basketball in Swan Hill, didn't even play basketball in Ballarat. It was all Aussie rules and cricket. And I was primary school when we left Ballarat and moved to, my parents sold it to us kids as we're heading to the Gold Coast. We weren't on the Gold Coast. We're at Beenleigh, which back then
was close.
Beenleigh was a cane farming town halfway between Brisbane and the Gold Coast, and that was where I first started playing basketball. Mainly because it was pretty hard to play Aussie rules. I used to catch a Greyhound or Skenner's bus up the Pacific Highway from Beenleigh and to Mount Gravatt. And played Aussie rules at Mount Gravatt. We won a premiership in my first year there in under 12s or under 14s or something. And that was not easy getting there and back.
And so where did you play basketball first?
I started at Beenleigh High. We had two teachers. So there's a guy, Neil Grantham, and Bruce, and you would know the Grantham name.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Reg, Neil and John. And so John was a very good player. And Neil and Reg were good players themselves. But in particular, coaching-wise, Neil started coaching. And
at Beenleigh?
Well, he was a PE teacher at Beenleigh High.
I did not know
So
that.
the Gold Coast basketball, you guys would probably know, back then was the Granthams and the Goldfinches, with a couple other guys thrown in. And just with those two families alone, they were a rock-solid team. So
and the Fox family were pretty predominant.
Yeah, that was obviously years later.
Did you play with Foxy at juniors?
Yeah. Well, so I started playing at Beenleigh High. So there's a guy, Neil Grantham was PE teacher, and there's another guy, Keith Howe, who was a rock-solid teacher, human, used to create opportunity for lots of kids at Beenleigh. They actually started up a basketball association there, the Logan and Albert Basketball Association.
So you played in that as well?
So, yep, we were. It actually started on the Beenleigh High basketball courts, which were asphalt courts down the back of the school. That's where we played.
What was the shoe, the Great Volley?
Well, you didn't actually want to buy good shoes.
You played with volleys. They just last
Dunlop volleys. Yeah, I can remember because you'd rip through them so quickly.
Correct.
Playing in them every day. I used to cut out the shape of my foot in cardboard, and when I had holes in my shoes, because I used to line the inside of my shoe with cardboard so it wouldn't rip holes in my socks.
And my parents couldn't afford. The first time I saw anything other than a Dunlop volley on a basketball court was when Tomo come to town in his Pallovers. Do you know Tomo's where it had Pallovers? Tell us a story about the Pallovers, Bruce.
Well, that's me and Alan Westover.
Yeah, right. Brought them in.
And then Gorgon kind of came in when he saw that it had potential. And we went down to Tassie selling ankle braces and neoprene sleeves. And we went into liquidation. We drank ourselves across Tassie, didn't make any sales. We were like the Three Stooges. So you played, I wanted to, my one question for you and all of our guests, we missed this one on Tang, though he did let us know he played rugby. But you had AFL, basketball, any other sports in your formative years?
Not really. It was mostly playing footy, but as I said before, I sort of stopped that, grade 8?
No cricket?
9. I tried to play a little bit of cricket, but I was terrible. My brother was quite good at footy, cricket, basketball, everything. I
think you were pretty good at. I would have never saw you play a game AFL, but I just know the athlete you are and the intent you have when you play. I would imagine you'd been good at AFL.
Yeah, well, as I sort of started watching more and more footy during my basketball time, and I had a cousin played for Richmond, and I just think my body type and, that, as Bruce mentioned before, your mindset, team first and defence, and I reckon I would have been a pretty solid centre half back player, and probably think in the Aussie mentality of, like we Australian mentality clashed with the American mentality around the whole flashiness and, the Cal Brute and razzle dazzle stuff didn't fit, certainly with me. I think I've probably fitted more into footy culture than basketball. I think it would have gone okay.
What was the game changer that made you swap over from, say, footy, which I know you love still to this day?
Yeah, probably. Well, one I mentioned was pretty hard. Aussie rules, when you come to Beenleigh, it was a rugby league town, and I'm going, that didn't appeal to me too much. I think I played 1 or 2 games for my high school. I remember sort of pushing off and getting rolled over in a tackle, and some knucklehead landed on me with a knee in the face, and I'm going, this is not fun.
I mean, rugby league's for hard.
And and I remember tackling this guy, and I slung him to the ground, and they gave a penalty, and I'm like, I thought this game you could just about do anything, and so I was a little bit confused.
You can do anything in the off season.
So the other weird thing was that my parents separated when I was early teenagers, grade 8, grade 9, and so going home wasn't that much fun, and so if I could hang out at basketball, that took me away from that sort of stuff. So I was.
So what was the association you were mostly playing in grade 8, 9, 10?
Because there was no association at Beenleigh. My brother was playing on the Gold Coast at the old Southport gym.
Yep.
And he was also playing out at Victoria Point. So
Vicky Point.
Yeah, so I would tag along to those games with my brother, just sitting there watching, and every now and again they'd be short of a player, and I'd then run around with blokes, 4 or 5 years older than me, and so then the connection, obviously, Neil Grantham, he and his wife Julie, who went on to become the Director General of Education in Queensland. She was a teacher at Charlotte Park State High School. They are lovely people.
I think she's still got a fairly big role.
I think she's moved out of education now. But they were so good. Like I used to, and this back in the days where Beenleigh High was like a country town, and they had a cane farm down the back of the school. Neil and I'd walk through the cane field at the back of the school across what is now the M1 motorway that's about 8 lanes there. Back then it was 4 lanes, if that. And we'd cross over the highway, and Julie'd pick us up on the side of the road, literally. I would stay at their house, and Neil would take me to Southport Gym, and I'd play one-on-one with John Grantham.
Wow.
So
John was an interesting character.
Yeah, he was a good player.
He was a good player.
And, you talk about kids now, being able to play. There's nothing better to learn the game of basketball than playing one-on-one against a good player.
Yeah.
So at probably 15, 16, I'm playing one-on-one with John Grantham, and John,
he didn't take it easy.
He didn't suffer fools, and he wouldn't have taken it easy. So
no way.
That was a great sort of introduction, because you mentioned Greg Fox before. So that guys like Greg Fox and those guys that are playing for Queensland at under 16 level, they were miles ahead of me. I came in quite late, really, to actually playing at the Gold Coast and at Southport.
Did you represent Queensland?
So I sort of caught up pretty rapidly and made the under-18 team back in 1985, it would have been, and they had the national titles at
Don't say Beenleigh. Okay.
So at Maroochydore. But that age group, WA, Luke Longley, Andrew Vlahoff. South Australia. I actually played against Mark Bradkey. He was before he went to South Australia, he played for a Darling Downs team in a South East Queensland championship. I was guarding him. It was me and Brett Hutchins and playing in the South Coast team. And I'm looking at this guy, he's already like 6'9", but his team was terrible, and Mark was terrible. He'd never played before, but they plucked him out, and then I think his family moved to South Australia, and then a couple of years later, he's a rock star. So Bradkey, South Australia.
Do you know that he's actually back on the Gold Coast running Gold Coast basketball?
Yeah, director of coaching.
I think that's
a great coup.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Vlahoff, Longley, Bradkey, Darren Perry. Who else was in the Victorian team back then? WA, South Australia.
They would have been good. I imagine Victoria would have won it, right?
WA
with that squad.
Yeah, I actually can't remember.
Because I'm a year younger than
Davey Graham, Darren Lucas, they're all around the same.
They're older than me. Yeah,
Are they? Okay,
yeah,
so Darren
didn't play.
Perry is your era?
Darren Perry.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember.
John Stelzer.
Oh, yeah.
He was ACT. New South Wales, Peter Hill.
Sure.
Peter Harvey.
Right.
They have names for the past.
Yeah.
They're all good players.
Yeah, and then Lyndon Briefies, Roger Smith. So Roger had moved up to the Gold Coast when I started sort of becoming a good player at the Gold Coast. The Smith boys arrived, and Roger wasn't in that under-18 team. He'd missed the trials and everything. And his dad, Arthur, was pretty
Tough.
pretty full on. He basically went to the association and said, my son should be in the team. And, most parents get told, sorry, mate, you missed the cut. But obviously Roger had pretty good background and became a member of the squad and then part of the team. So the Queensland team, Lyndon Briefies, Paul Webb.
The Webster.
Played in the Bullets in his grade 12 year out of St. Peter's.
Just side note, Webby sent me a message, listens to the podcast.
Cool.
We got to have him on.
Yeah.
We will do a FaceTime with him.
Yeah.
He just loved the one. I think it was the Undies show he sent me after that because there was a bit of St. Peter's talk during that. And, so Webby's a good man, all 6'10" of him.
Yes. So Webby
Yeah, I don't remember.
was in that team. Paul
And he
Webb.
played for the Bullets.
A
He was
little
the-
bit in 86.
The team they won it in 87. He was in the squad.
Yeah, but he left and went to University of Richmond
Yeah,
in
the
Richmond
Spider.
Spiders.
and he, as I was telling Bruce, he's like the world guru on walruses. It's just
He's a
incredible.
marine. He's like George Costanza. He's
Oh.
a marine biologist.
Okay.
But he's a professor, isn't he, of marine
Yeah,
biology?
he's at a university and
Highly intelligent and very funny individual.
Okay,
But we
so
digress.
Under 18s. How about did you under 20?
I captained the under-20 team in my second year under Dave Claxton as coach.
Right.
The year before my first year under-20s I played, but the issue for me was always, can I afford to go? I had a single mum. So my first year under-20s we played in Adelaide. Scott Kroll, I think Mark Bragg was the coach. Scott Kroll was the point guard. He was out of Townsville. So I was sort of playing behind him, and he was a veteran who'd been good, great junior coming through, but then everyone sort of caught up and surpassed him. So I didn't get to play much in my first year.
Did he have any NBL?
I don't think
career
so.
at all? I don't remember
think
that
so.
name.
Don't think so.
No.
So then my second year, here's another indication of the quality of people that Neil Grantham and Keith Howe that provided enormous opportunity for me. My second year, I was going pretty well. In Queensland, Dave Claxton's coach, and I sort of said, because I couldn't afford to go. It cost my mum and I a couple of grand the year before, essentially, to get to Adelaide, and I'm like, I just don't have the money. Dave Claxton, who was working, I think, at Smith & Nephew back then, got a wheelbarrow full of stuff donated and ran a raffle at Auchenflower so I could get to the national titles in my
on him.
second
Clacker, mate.
Great
second
guy.
year of
A-grade
under 20.
man.
So I never forget that. So I captained that under 20 team in my second year.
Teammates.
Back then, under
Yeah,
20.
on the under 20 team.
Oh gosh, I think Lyndon was still
Lyndon
playing.
would have been.
Lyndon, Roger, myself.
trying to think who's in that team.
Face the nation.
Face. No,
Face is my age.
Yeah, Face played with Steve. Brett Hutchins.
Foxy.
Greg Fox would have been around. Yeah, Greg Fox, Brett Hutchins, me, Roger.
That's all the guards. Lyndon, Rector set.
Trying to remember who the bigs were.
Yeah, the bigs. We probably weren't that strong in the bigs, were we?
Was Peter Foster in that?
No.
He was in mine, I know, but he was like
Yeah, I
Tom
remember
was a
him
man
being in
child.
my Brisbane squad, but remember there's Robert Corst who went on to be a very good rugby union player, but I'm pretty sure that was the state schools
Right.
team. So so I played in Queensland school teams as well as the under 18, under 20 stuff.
Let's jump stop and pivot. Let's go to your NBL career. Started at the Gold Coast.
Well, Gold Coast were not in the NBL, but at the time so this is 1988 now. So when I finished high school, played for the Brisbane Brewers, which are now the Capitals. My first year at Teachers College. My second year out of high school, I played for Ipswich in the State League.
Okay.
Rick Harden, the very first or second Bullets coach, I believe.
Played against him in 82.
Do you have to grow a head?
To play for Ipswich.
Yeah.
Just had a tunnel in and out.
As I was driving in, one of the things, I was actually thinking of my basketball journey, and I have been blessed. None of us would be here if we weren't blessed with good coaching along the way, because it's such a massive influence on whether you enjoy the game and then become good at it.
I've already picked up that Neil Grantham obviously is that initial teaching your fundamentals and. It's like when Lyndon was on here for Lyndon and I, it was Alan Jenkins in Bundaberg. They're just these, and he's still going. Like Al must be in his 80s.
Yep.
Good on him.
Yeah, and but they're important to you. And then I've been very lucky. All my coaches have been great.
Yep. So coming out of school. Brisbane, Dave Claxton's coach.
Great.
And in my grade 12 year, I actually signed with the Bullets in grade 12 in 1986 in between their championship years. Yep. That was a world championship year, so they were staring down the barrel of Larry, maybe Rob Sibley, Leroy,
Ronnie Ratliff,
Cal, all being away with the Boomers. Oh. And I think Curley was assistant coach at the time, wasn't he?
Yep.
So they were going, all right, we might have half a squad here. And the NBL kept rolling, is my understanding, through that back then. So I signed a contract, and I think I've mentioned this to Stevie one more. I've mentioned it to Curley. I never got that money from that contract. It was $1. And to this date, I've never been paid the remuneration for that contract.
Think of the interest. It's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. That's got to be worth $8.
Throw that straight in your retirement.
Hey, I'm saying let's set up a little tent outside of the Bullets headquarters at South Quarter and with placards. We want money for Grizzy.
Yeah, 1986.
How do you think that'll go? 1986?
So 86, playing for St. Peter's. Actually, before we go to the NBL, we were national champions that year. We won the Queensland title, and then my St. Peter's team in 86, and you mentioned Dwayne Rogers and Paul Webb, Mark Earley, Mark Thompson, we spoke about Tomo.
Was Tomo often injured?
I think he maybe had a lower back issue.
Lower back. And allergies, right?
Yeah. So,
mate, to this day, he's the number one athlete that I saw wearing your pullovers.
Mm-hmm. He was promoting it.
Yeah.
It was before its time.
He was sponsored, probably.
He was way before his time.
He would have been covered in it. He would have played in a wetsuit, right?
Yeah.
Because he can't touch other people.
A lot of wristbands and, maybe a headband. Did he wear a headband? Possible.
Stave off early balding.
86, I'm playing with St. Peter's. I'm playing State League with the Brewers, which are the Capitals now. Dave Claxton coaching that. But there were some veterans there, Brian Delaney, Shane Edwards, Rick Lawyer. So I was sort of struggling to get minutes there.
Even Dan Clausen was still hanging around there.
Yep. Wow. Dave Nelson, you spoke about last week, Danny Morsu. So those guys are all in and around out of that stuff.
They're the sort of guys we got to play with as the young kids,
it's great.
Playing with Morsey he was right at the end of his career, but he was so much fun to play with.
And you talked with Tang last week about the AIS, the load, like my training load. We were training every morning, training every afternoon, playing Wednesday nights, playing weekends. I remember my Thursdays, straight after school, we'd have school training for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Then I'd train with the Bullets for an hour and a half to 2 hours. Then I'd train with the state league team. Like I think I did 6 hours straight after school.
It can't be good for your body. It just can't. And that's what happened.
And you mentioned the early days of my sport. Then because I was a boarder at St. Peter's, I would go home on weekends, and the only way I'd earn a bit of coin back then was I'd play footy with my brother's footy team because I was fit. So I'd play Aussie rules against these men. I was, probably 80 kilos dripping wet. But because I was fit, I could run all game. They'd put me in the ruck or
I think it's a lesson for a lot of our.
Just wait. I just took it off the stats. It said you were 95 kilos. I was a bit shocked when I read that.
That's probably by about 1996 when Bruce had had me Garden Vlahoff.
Sorry about the interruption, Steve. I didn't know that you were going to jump in. But,
It's been a bit testy today, hasn't it?
no, we're working fine together. I just want to comment about the younger players playing against older, men.
Yes.
And how that accelerates you because everything's done quicker, right? Faster.
And
They're
stronger. Yeah.
And I remember when I was 13, I would have been in 8th grade because I started school early. It wasn't because I was a great academic, but my eldest brother was at USC playing with Paul Westphal. And I, just like you said, they'd drag me down. I'd come around and I'll just shoot on a side basket, but if they're short on numbers. And I remember this vividly, the late, great Hall of Famer Paul Westphal. He was a senior at USC. Mark was my brother Mark was a freshman. So I would have been in grade 8. And I was playing with these, I'm noticing, wow, the ball comes faster. And Westphal threw me a pass. I had to jump, and I snatched it and gathered it in with one hand. And he's already an All-American, right? And he came up to, this meant the world to me, and said, nice catch.
Good catch, yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that could even gain applause and recognition. But
Because he's probably thinking that was a bad pass, thinking it's going out of bounds, and you caught it.
maybe, but it just filled me with pride. And then of course you go down and play with your age group.
Yeah.
And this is the speed and strength and power.
There's
you
no
play
question.
with.
Yeah.
It's the beauty of our game that you can do that. It's pretty hard to play rugby league A grade when you're 15. You're just physically impossible.
Well, I think the other thing that's important is that those guys that were playing against you, you mentioned Grantham. He ain't going easy on you, or else he gets nothing out of it.
Yeah.
And I remember being at a basketball camp, the Bill Boyd basketball camp. And you guys remember the name Rick Barry?
Yeah.
Well, he was one of the guests. They had Bill Russell, Jerry West, and Rick Barry called me out, or I was asked to come out and go one-on-one with Rick Barry. And we're playing to 11. He gave me 9 and the ball. And he made a point of saying this, that I don't know this kid at all, but I know this. I owe it to what's your name? Bruce. I owe it to Bruce to kick his rear end. I can't come down to Bruce's level. I've got to take it to the best I can compete.
Drag him up.
And sure enough, he beat me 11-9. But, a valuable lesson that when I go down, I don't go down now and play, but when I did and I was playing, I don't fart around. I get nothing out of it. I'm not giving them anything.
Well, that Gold Coast era there with the Granthams and Goldfinches and others, John used to run the Southport scrimmage. So through the summer, you turn up there and you're an outsider. You had to fight your absolute ring off.
There'd be a lot of NBL players that rock up to those Sunday
They were on
sessions
holidays
that
looking
would-
for a scrimmage.
Yeah,
It used to be great at the old...
Yeah.
Did you ever go to the old Southport?
Yeah, great floor.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we go there, but Grantham ran it. Like if you were trying to be a little bucky kid to...
What were the games to?
Oh, I can't remember. They were pretty solid.
Yeah, it'd probably be to 7 or
11,
something, 1
7.
point a basket,
Yeah,
and winners held court. So if you got knocked out and there's 5 teams waiting, you're waiting a long time.
And Grantham ran it. You had to... You when you got on
Who
there...
called
you
the fouls?
You call
Defense.
no referees. You call them yourself.
Yeah, but the offense called the fouls or the
Defense.
defense called
I've
the
always grown up with defence call a foul. And for me, if I fouled someone, I'd say it. And I always find when offence calls fouls that you got the
every
dicks.
missed shot.
Yeah, you would have been everything you shot was a foul if you didn't make it, right?
Well, of course.
Yeah. So
When the
that would
offense
have
called the
driven me up.
fouls.
So I need to knock your head in
I
there.
don't think it's time to pivot.
Pivot.
Next question, please. So who did you start your NBL career with?
So, went from being at St. Peter's, training with the Bullets, went State League Brisbane, State League Ipswich under Rick Harden, and then your mate and mine,
Tommy
Wiseman. So the Ipswich team, we played in the semi-finals up in Cairns or Townsville with the finals, lost the semi. I'm actually on the plane back to Brisbane from that final. And because I'm living at Beenleigh, I'm hitching a ride with one of the Gold Coast guys to get back to Beenleigh. And Tom Wiseman chatted with me on the plane at the airport and going, hey, would you be interested in playing with the Gold Coast? And at the time, Gold
Was your
Coast...
commitment done with Ipswich?
Yeah, I was just
Or
there
did
for
he
1
poach
year.
you?
Well, the season was over. Well, it was there for the year. It was after the final, so we'd finished. But Gold Coast and Townsville were vying for the one extra NBL licence.
I remember this.
And Townsville got the nod. But at the time, Gold Coast were as much of a chance. So I thought, and as
90?
so this
91.
this is
89.
1988.
Going into 89.
I go and play with the Gold Coast, and they're trying to get an NBL team together so that if they do get the licence in 89,
Yeah.
which is I think when the team came in, Townsville gets the licence and Gold Coast doesn't. And so I'm playing for Wiseman, but that's when then Dave Adkins, who brought out some legends to it, Leroy Loggins, James Crawford, Al
That
Green.
was the year.
So I'm playing 88 for Gold Coast. We win the Queensland State League, playing the Jones Cup in Taipei. That year I won Youth Player of the Year, and I also made the All-Star 5, and we won the championship.
Wow.
And Dave Atkins came up and watched me play. We had a double header on the Gold Coast. Dave came and watched me play 2 games, and in his American drawl said, well, Gribble, I think you have NBL potential. Would you come and play with Hobart? And at the time,
So you played with David Atkins
when I
for
first
sure
went
in
to Hobart, yes,
Okay.
yeah. So, but he quit after
1 year.
3 or 4. No, it wasn't even a season. He was there the year before with Carfino and Stanley and what have you, and Joe Hurst came in.
I love Joe Hurst.
1989, when I arrive, Joe Hurst still there. Carfino had been recruited to Sydney. Dave Atkins coaches, I think it was only like 3 or 4 games and quit. So
And who took over then?
well, initially, Gordy McLeod. So I went down to be Gordy McLeod's understudy in the point guard spot. And again, I got down there thinking, I'm Gordy's understudy, but there's like 18 guys in the squad, and Craig Gilbert and there's Derek Schock and all these other point guards in there. And I'm like, okay, I've got to fight for a spot here, but was able to get my spot behind Gordy. And one of the best things that happened for me, Gordy got injured that year, had a groin injury and couldn't play. Dave Atkins quit. Gordy becomes head coach, and
Gave you the chance.
and he's not playing, so I become the starting point guard.
Jerry Denard.
Yep, Murray Shields, Jerry Denard, Joe Hurst,
It's not a bad squad.
Wayne McDaniel had just arrived.
Yeah.
So so it was Gordy, Joe Hurst.
Jeez, it's not a bad squad.
Yeah,
at all.
well, we and so Gordy coached a couple of games. Then they signed Tom Maher.
Right.
And Tom, that was a sort of difficult decision in that Tom had been very successful in the Women's League. And then, the question was, is his stuff going to cross over? And he was understudy to you and Gorgian and everyone in
He
Melbourne.
was really, Tommy had
Student of the
success
game.
before he ever went to the WNBL. He, really good coach.
Yeah.
But it's a completely different environment. Where he had a lot of his success with the national program. Robin Marr is a stud.
Yeah.
Michelle Timms is
Stud.
a stud.
Shelley Gorman.
Shelley Gorman is a stud. Rachel
Absolutely.
Sporn. I mean, the fabric of that team. I was one of the greatest learning experiences I ever had was in '97. I was an assistant. And it got down to a camp. This is a great story. I don't want to interrupt the Luke Gribble story, but at the Institute, they put a scale. You've been to the AIS where you open the first door and there's a little foyer area, and then the next door lets you in. He had a scale right there. And 2 girls came in on the same cab weights, because you got to be in your optimum weight. I think he gave them like 2 kilos. You can go over this, but if you're over that, you're not coming. And sure enough, these 2 girls were over that weight, and they went straight back and flew them home. Now, I don't think we have the finances to do that today, but Tom's ship was tight.
Yeah.
So how many years did you play for Tom at that? Did Tom,
Well, so,
Tom lasted
yeah.
what?
It was only a couple of years because and that year, once Tom came in, again, that became very good for me in that I got to play a lot. So Gordy came back and played, but by then I'd sort of settled in and found my feet. Late in my rookie year, we played Adelaide, which you guys would know back in that era. Mark Davis, Bill Jones,
Green.
Darryl Pearce, Mike Mackay, Ninnis, Bradkey. We beat Adelaide in Hobart, and Hobart, never used to beat anybody. So we knock off Adelaide. Darryl Pearce is still in the Boomers squad then. I think Darryl Pearce had 4 points, and I'm matched up on him. He had 4, and I had 19, and got MVP of the game. And this is my rookie year. A week later, we play Perth in Hobart, and we beat Perth. And again, I had a really good game. And so I'd gone from, I was still a rookie, but they started thinking, hey, this kid can play. Tom came in that year. Justin Cass comes in the following year.
Yeah.
So this is 1990. 1990 this
90.
would be. 89, my first year in Hobart. 1990,
second.
Justin Cass and I are the backcourt.
And you were there for 91 as well.
Yeah, so I did 3 years there. But yeah, so in 91, we were going. We had a pretty solid team. I made the Boomers squad that year in 91, my second year in the league. And again, that era of, we said before, Longley, Vlahoff, Bradkey, it was a pretty cool crew to be coming through with. So just to be picked and flown to Canberra to be part of that was the Barcelona Olympics.
Unbelievable.
I couldn't believe it. So end of the second year though, or was it into the third? Yeah, into the second year there, we go 0-6, but we'd gone Adelaide, Perth on the road, Newcastle, Sydney on the road, probably Melbourne and North Melbourne or something like that. We dropped 2 or 3 of those games in the last 30 seconds of the game. I remember in Adelaide at the old Apollo Stadium, we're up by 1. They shoot it as the clock's running down. The ball goes over the backboard there, and I don't know, remember the old Apollo. There was just
dark
metal everywhere. How it fell through and didn't hit something, and someone catches it, throws it in, and someone hits a shot, and we lose by 1. It's almost similar story in Sydney, lost by 1. So we're 0-6. They sack Tom Maher and bring in Cal Britton, and so I went from being great rookie season. Second year, I'm in the Boomers squad. Third year, they sacked Tom, bring Cal in, and Cal.
He was captain coach. Would he play?
Well, no, he wasn't. But he's at 36 or 38. Thinks, I think I can come back as a player. So Sean Dennis and I, who were the 2 point guards, we both got the axe. Cal came back as a player, recruited an American point guard, wanted to go with that Perth model, the Grace point guard. So, that was...
That guy was from Mouse McFadden. Was that the guy?
Whitehead, Donald Whitehead,
okay.
Whiteside, something, and then that guy. But anyway, ultimately, so I had a year to run on my contract, got a little bit of that paid out, but then I'm like, okay, I've had 3s in the league now, had gone pretty well, but didn't have a team at that point. And then I'm like, I remember talking to Lindsay Gaze, and he said he'd happy for me to come to the Tigers, but that was going to be hard with no guaranteed income. I'd bought a house in Hobart, and so I'm like, and I sort of thought, I could probably play myself into a spot, but I thought, all right, time to go home. So back to Queensland. Gold Coast are in the NBL now. Claxton's coach. Clacker was a bit keen to have me. Gordy McLeod's now assistant coach to Curly at the Bullets. So I spoke to Gordy, said, hey, I'm coming back. Spoke to Claxton, and then Gold Coast were actually a bit keen, and they were in the States at the time and rang me and said they were prepared to offer me a contract, but I sort of hung out. Brisbane actually didn't offer me a contract, and they had multiple guards, Brendan Joyce, Steve McLeod, Greg Fox, Darren Breeding and Duncan Johnston had sort of been through, Leroy, Dicko. Like, there was just a long list of guards that sort of had been in and around Brisbane at the time. So on paper, it was a really poor decision, but I, as a kid, grew up being a Bullets fan, thought I'm going to Brisbane. So
Brisbane 92 to 96.
yeah,
That's what, 4 seasons
yeah. So
or 5?
Dave Adkins, 5 at the Bullets. So Dave Adkins, Tom Marr, and Cal Bruton at Hobart. Come back to Brisbane, Brian Curl, Bruce Palmer, and then David Ingham, and then that became the end.
That was the end.
Yeah, well, at the end of '96, Sean Dennis, I think, is an assistant at Newcastle.
Yep.
Had maybe an option to go on there, but at that point you're starting to go.
Was he an assistant with Tom?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Sean he went on Townsville Coach of the Year a number of times.
Yeah.
He ended up being head coach in Newcastle.
Yeah.
Didn't he?
Absolutely.
yeah. So I've been
Great
blessed,
guy, Sean
blessed
Dennis.
with some good coaches. So
Speaking
I had
of
to make
someone
a
else
decision.
that'd be good to have on.
Absolutely.
Wisman, it'd be great.
Yeah.
And Sean Dennis, yep.
Yeah. Well, we'll get them both. Wizzy, I stay in touch with Sean. I just follow.
Yeah.
He's done a great job
Awesome.
in Japan.
He's just a great guy.
Deserves the payday. Okay, and then you, or did you want me to pivot?
You pivot. Keep going. You're doing a great job.
You got into
I know
coaching.
you. I know you work really well with praise. So
And encouragement.
yeah, exactly. And because we started off a bit testy before,
Not really, no.
I just want to let you keep going.
No, it's fine. You've coached. So you ran the basketball program at Terrace. What was that title?
I was director of basketball
Director of
and
basketball.
first coach for a lot of
Yeah.
years.
How many years?
I think I coached for the first team for 13 years, and I was
True.
director of basketball, running the whole program for 9 or 10 years, I think.
Jeez Louise. Of course, was it the same size then as it is now?
Not at the 60
Just
team
was
level.
growing.
Yeah,
like
well,
every year it grew.
the issue was we could always accommodate more teams. It was difficult with the court issue, but the issue was teams to play against.
Right.
So we went ABC, grade 5, 6, 7, and then ABCD, grade 8 to 12. It's a
Fair bit of work.
Yeah, so it was a massive...
There's 60 teams now. I think
Yeah.
there's 61
Yeah,
or
back
something.
Well, now
then-
they've got a brilliant administrator.
Back then there'd be, 35, 40 teams.
Right.
Yeah.
I know that I reached out to you about coaching the Capitals when I was in the role of, I don't know what the title was, but I looked after the 6 senior teams and
Yeah.
it's too much. I understood. You got Zach doing, or I think Lily finished school, but Zach was your son still in.
Yeah, well, the issue for me when you're time poor in a full-time job, if you're going to go and coach...
It's another full-time job.
Well,
not just
and,
about.
yeah, and if you're going to do something, you're going to do it well. And so, and for the commitment, like you said before, those roles in GPS schools in your conversation last week, you're paid reasonably well. My time I think is valuable, especially if you're going to do that, you're not with your kids. And I'm going,
Right.
if I'm not with my kids, I need to get paid. And most of those jobs were not paying gigs. I miss coaching at that elite level. When I was playing, even with the Bullets, we were all playing in the Wednesday night comp, and I was player coach at Lang Park, and so coached men. I coached the junior Bullet squad after I finished.
Squashed that out of my head that you played for Lang Park. That's not in my memory. The slime.
The slime.
Yeah, Lang Park.
They paid Steve. They paid me.
Oh, okay.
So,
I remember Casey Jones and I was playing for Lindsay, never paid, and that's cool, but I got paid by playing for Pivot City down in Tomo's stomping ground. Casey Jones and I would
Geelong.
drive down there, and we'd get $50 a game.
but
Every
back
play.
then, $50 is like
Oh, it's huge.
500 now.
But that's I could have. Then we played in Chelsea. Gorgon and I played. So we'd play Monday night at Chelsea. Wednesday night was VBA, and then Thursdays would be at Pivot City. Casey and I would drive down, and I'd get $100 a week. This is before, what I mean? There was no NBL. It was just the VBA.
Yeah.
Those
That's
were
good
the
money.
days.
Yeah, that's 60 years ago, right?
Yeah. Now, can I pivot again?
Yeah.
60 years ago. Yeah, I was 9 when I was playing then. You are a Bullets fan, and you do follow the Bullets. And you do follow, you mentioned earlier before we went on air that you don't really watch a lot of the end. Well, you've been away. You were at Morton Island and whatnot. You don't make the time to watch NBL games now, right?
Well, I don't spend a lot of time in front of the television.
You're like me.
So, busy working, and probably my passion is still my children. My daughter's an elite netballer, so I enjoy watching her play. And
You like baiting the hook a little bit?
I like fishing and
Yes.
camping and boating, BCF. I still enjoy watching the NBL. Like I watched the Bullets Tassie game the other day. It's more, just the timing of it. Like I probably make time to watch the Brisbane Lions games, but I'm less likely to do that.
I've got to say, Brisbane Lions were so impressive this year. I just don't think that our community give them the praise that they richly deserve.
Yeah, Chris Fagan's pretty special. You hear the players talk about their head coach, and clearly there's a lot of affection there, and
You know what I admire? He's staying on a 1-year deal. He wants to have that edge,
yeah.
right? I don't think Chris Fagan would have to worry about getting another job. But man, we won the championship. Every game was on the road, was it not? Did we have a home game? We being the Lions.
The Lions, no, they were home and away all the way. Oh, you mean in the finals?
In the finals, I thought they won everything on the road.
Their first one was at home, I think, and then they were on the road for the next
Right.
two. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
And then the grand finals at the MCG.
And they just cleaned the clock. Who'd they play in the granny? Sydney. Beat them like rented mules.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm with you, mate. And we've already said about, I remember in 97, the guy that was the coach at the time at St. Louis, Rick Majerus, the late Rick Majerus, who coached Andrew Bogut at Utah. But he was the 22 and under USA national coach. And at breakfast, which he had, because he was a big guy, and he would take a mouthful of cereal and start talking. So you had to duck. But he was raving about AFL, the athletes. He goes, Jesus, you know how much they run? And we had some strength coach was there and said, it works out to about 25 kilometers. And he goes, what's a kilometer? And either way, he marveled at it, and they sent guys over to study. What is it that they do that it's not like just running, but they're also skilled?
And their power, their speed, agility, endurance. Yeah, they're super elite. One of the things, just as you were talking, thinking about it, one of the things that I struggle with the NBL is the commentary.
Can I pivot and just say Luke Gribble is one of I'm sitting here with the three of us were all commentators.
A little bit of commentary.
You were very professional.
Luke was good.
You were really good and insightful. Steve was fun.
You ruined my career after the first interview. Let's not go there.
When I watch a game of Australian rules football, the commentary is insightful. I like it's very much like basketball. It is like chess at 1,000 mile an hour. But the quality of people they have commentating, and their standing in the game, and their understanding of the game, and their ability to give you,
some information, please.
Yeah,
it's great to listen to the commentating if you were blind, because you just repeat what you just saw. And how hard is it to get on Wikipedia? Tell us where some of these imports. I still haven't. Moody played at Texas Tech. I've never heard that on a commentating. The other guy, Smell Mafinga.
Yeah, Meninga.
Meninga.
Yeah.
What's his first name?
Mal.
Sammy.
Sammy.
Meninga.
Sam Meninga.
Who are we talking
Played at
about?
Davidson.
Oh, you're talking. I thought you were talking when you said Meninga. I thought you were talking about. I thought you reverted to rugby league.
Yeah, I want to pivot. I want to ask Luke a couple of things before we tie this in a bow. To use one of your sayings is, mate, the game today versus the game that you used to play. What are your thoughts? How has it evolved and changed from your like? I've been watching basketball with you and playing since we were in our teens.
The skill level of players across the board is exceptional, I think. Obviously, there's been that. I heard you talking to Tang last week. I remember when there was no 3-point line.
Yeah.
As I said before, I grew up playing on a asphalt court. You didn't launch a perimeter shot because it'd be blowing a gale and. So if you wanted to score, you had to get to the rim.
Well, you had to have a flag up to get the direction of the wind.
Yeah,
so you took that into account.
Which ultimately was good in that I could get to the ring. But that evolution, that you're seeing, I don't enjoy watching the NBA much when it's just jacking up threes. I don't college basketball. I couldn't get enough of Olympic basketball. That's what basketball is to me. And I appreciate the defense, the scrapping, the strategy, the coaching. So Olympic basketball, World Championship basketball. That's
good basketball.
That's where I like to see it.
So let me just. I know we got to tie it in a bow, but. Your opinion of the Bullets. I like their effort and everything else. They're missing it. It hurt having Bateman go out. It hurt. He's been in and out a lot. Is Bannon. Josh.
Yeah, well, the big out that I think's hurt them the most is Sam McDaniel's their rock.
Huge.
So
he's
you
massive
go that
loss.
Illawarra game the other day when you go on your man Trey Cal. If Sam McKinnon's in that game and locking him down, and he can get to the rim and just those little 10, 15 foot play.
He is a massive.
He's
loss
the
to them.
linchpin there. So losing him was massive. I watched the game against Tassie with Bateman out. There's a team full of role players.
Asking a lot of
Yeah,
them. They
well,
were down on cattle.
Yeah.
They're down on cattle.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to say that from a positive perspective about next man up, right? But at the end of the day, if you don't have the ability to score 50 points.
The concerning thing for me, I watched the game like a month ago, 5 weeks ago, where the three imports were just going through the motion, didn't look like they wanted to be there. And who's our point guard and his nephew?
Mitch Norton.
Mitch Norton's leading the score. I think he drops 20
he had
points
20
in
that game,
20 in that game, just through determination and grit. And I'm going,
That's not fair on Mitch.
no, well, he would do whatever it takes to win, and I'm a big fan
love
of
it.
his. I'm a big fan of his. He's a winner. But when you have role players, Steve, you're a role player. I was a role player. At that level, you need the Leroy Loggins or the Dave Colbert to knock down a three, and when you get him the ball, he's going to make that shot. Prather's elite.
Prather's really he
Younger
has
Cook's had
surprised
some
me.
really good games. I think he's a good player. Losing, but if all three are fit and hungry, and then you've got some good role players around them, I think they're good, but probably
Do you
don't
think
have that same level of talent.
Here's an interesting thing. I think I mentioned it last week. Melbourne United are the only team currently in the top six with a starting Australian point guard. We're on the bubble with Mitch, Australian point guard.
Well, with Bateman out, we are Australian. It's why.
Well, even with Bateman was there.
he
Mitch
came off
still
the bench.
played.
That's when he found his mojo. When they
Right.
took him out of the first.
They tuck it under his seat.
Yeah.
His mojo. But I think it's an interesting thing, and I know Gorgon has been commenting about, they're going to bring in the kid that played with...
His name is... It's something like Josh Adams. He was the very first import
I remember him now.
signed by Tassie. So he has signed for the Bullets. So he may even be there for the next game.
Yeah.
If not, it'll one after. So Josh Adams.
And I don't think you have to have an American. Like if you could have Mitch Norton, but your two men's got to be a gun that can score and create.
Swing.
Yeah, and so it's
Sammy Mack would help. Sammy
McDaniel.
Sammy Mack.
Yeah.
Sam McDaniel, my fault. I was talking
Yeah.
about the great
So-
Sam.
Goes under the name Smack.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to pivot
Okay.
because I want to run through the games. That
Quickly? Sure, because batteries are an issue.
And this is Luke's chance to tell us who he thinks is going to win.
Okay.
Tonight, Sydney Kings, Southeast Melbourne. The team I say first is the home team.
yes.
Bruce, sometimes... You got that, Bruce?
I got it now.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, Sydney at home, I think they'll win, but we like the Phoenix because their boy Sammy McKinnon's down there. But I think Sydney Kings at home, and after a bit of adversity.
They looked woeful, mate. Against Adelaide,
But-
they looked
But
woeful.
yeah, after a woeful game, you'd
I'd like
expect
to think
that
Sydney
they'd
will
bounce back.
Bounce back.
Illawarra
Next game,
Cairns.
Illawarra versus Cairns.
I was surprised to see Cairns win-loss record when they played the Bullets last week because they got some talent.
Mate,
but,
they've lost 14 in a
yeah,
row.
Yeah, so you can't go past Illawarra at home.
Adelaide versus Melbourne United.
Again, bit of disunity there by the stuff that's come out in the press with their big guy saying we don't understand our roles, and then they come out and get a win, which, again, often after adversity, but I'm going Melbourne United there.
Bullets versus Sydney Kings.
Yeah. Well, I think if
home team
Bateman
is the
plays,
Bullets.
I reckon Bullets win. Are a
Bateman's
much better
done for
chance.
the year.
But yeah, he's done. He's done. So I'm thinking Sydney
Okay. New Zealand Breakers versus Perth Wildcats.
in New Zealand. It's a tough road trip. That's halfway around the world. But I'm going Perth.
So, Tasmania Jack Jumpers versus the Phoenix. Phoenix second game.
Jack Jumpers at home.
Yep.
Yeah.
Illawarra versus Tassie. At Illawarra's home.
Is how long's Magnay out for? If
I can't
Magnay's
answer
in,
that.
If Magnay's in, I'm going Tassie. If he's out, I'm going Illawarra.
Okay. And then the last game of the round is Brisbane Bullets versus the Breakers.
I'm going Brisbane there.
Okay. So that's round 15, I think we're in. So starting off tonight, which will be good. Luke, my final comment about Luke and just watching this guy play basketball and be a competitor, he reminds me of like a Deladova, like he's just the guy that you love to play with. You know that he's going to play D on whoever we ask him to play D. He shares the ball and just leads by example, So I've really enjoyed having you have a chat with us today, Luke. So I
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much, Luke.
Thank you.
Taking your time off during our New Year's holiday.
Yeah.
Didn't take long.